Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Chloe, thank you for introduction. I'm excited to be here, and especially excited because this was postponed for a couple of times. So this makes it very special for me. Today, I would like to talk about powerful questions drawing from my experience in the business. As Chloe mentioned, I was in the sales for a very long time, which is all about asking questions when you work with the clients and partners. And also, obviously, from my coaching experience, I would like to share some of the concepts, a bit of theory to hopefully help you to tune up your questioning style. If you're a recruiter, if you're a hiring manager, also if you're a candidate. So if we look into interviewing process, there are really three parties involved who communicate between each other, and important to understand that all of them have different goals in the process. So hopefully the final goal is to fill an open role, but of course everybody on the stage comes to this process from a different background and with different expectations. So client or hiring manager, of course they need to hire a person who will be the great fit for the team, who has certain experience, who is ready to do certain tasks or accomplish projects. Candidate on their side are looking for many different things. It can be a step in the career, it can be a job with a work-life balance, it can be joining specific team or a company with a culture. So as you can see already here, we have two sides who may be looking for the same thing as in the open role, but they're coming from a different perspectives. And of course, in the middle of this process is a recruiter who is connecting these two parties. And today I'd like to talk around the questioning that if you are a recruiter or a hiring manager, you can ask about the role, not only to candidates, but also to a hiring manager to better understand what is the expectations and who is the perfect person we're looking for. So again, like going back to interviews, the question is like, so whose job is to make it a good fit? So is it the candidate who is supposed to look for a best fit job and for best job description, or it's the process of unveiling what the candidate has to offer? My take on this, it's both sides, but again, today's conversation is what you as a recruiter can do to uncover this. For me, the solution for this is really powerful questioning. So interview is all about asking questions, but what makes them powerful? So definition of a powerful questioning is a reflection of a listening and understanding the other person's perspective. So I would say this is a key here, because we are coming to interview when we talk to a candidate, or if we talk to a hiring manager about what they are really looking for, their experience and their needs, we come from their perspective. And if to look a bit further on this, this suggests that you listen, you paraphrase, you understand, and then what comes next is a powerful question, which really helps to yield some clarity and elicit some insight. So what does it mean on a practical level? How can you recognize when a question is powerful, when it's not powerful, when it's weak, or whatnot? So first of all, powerful questions, they always intended to help receivers. So when we ask a question, we want the person to bring out their best, to bring out their strengths, to bring out their potential. So the question is supposed to help them to do this. The second signal for recognizing powerful question is that it creates energy. Now we're all in the online world. Most of the first screenings happening over the phone or video calls. So you can notice yourself whenever the person is energized. Either it's the body language, or it's the speed of speech, or some emotion coming into the conversation. So this definitely means that there is some energy and that your question created it. Powerful questions, they always cultivate insight. So again, talking from the interview perspective, we always lean on CVs and what the candidate already outlined in the CV. So obviously, asking questions that kind of repetitive or cover the most of the topics in the CV are not very insightful. So powerful questions, again, they allow to bring out something new, perhaps open up some of the topics or bring something that was between the lines. So they should cultivate insight. And the last thing is that powerful questions, they don't really have any hidden agenda. So uh, depending on the things that you are looking for in the candidate, sometimes we may be looking for some tricky questions, or maybe the CV is not too clear. But it's important to recognize that we're coming from a very positive intent whenever we are asking these powerful questions. So kind of to explain it on a bit deeper level, I would encourage you to read up a bit about the appreciative inquiry. So I found this comic, which I think illustrates it the best. Appreciative inquiry is the concept used in coaching, and we lean heavily on it. Because what I mentioned previously, the question is coming from the best intent. The same is true for appreciative inquiry. So wherever we are asking people or we are inquiring them of something, we are looking from a positive perspective. So coaching is generally based on an idea that the person is wholesome, that the person has potential, that the person has all the strengths to accomplish any goals they plan for themselves. So the same, I would suggest you to use this approach in your interviewing, to come from an asset-based view rather than from a deficit-focused. You will see how it will change the dynamics in the conversation. Of course, there are some very practical steps you can take. So these bits of theory, all good, all clear, I hope. What does it mean when we actually start asking questions? So all questions, they all have very clear, I would say, architecture. So the first part of the architecture is really how powerful is the beginning of the question, what question type to say you're using. So the least powerful are questions that start with which or yes or no questions, so-called closed questions. So the reason why they're less powerful is because they don't really offer any additional insights. So whenever you're asking question yes or no, you're either confirming or not whatever you already thought about this person or assumed. The same goes about questions starting with which. So what they do, they merely help you to clarify some minor details. So generally, if you want your questions to be really powerful and strong, avoid using this. Probably here it's best to mention that there is no one perfect and the best question. Of course, conversation is a flow, and depending on the context and what's happening in the conversation, it may be appropriate to have a closed question or question starting with which, but this is kind of just a rule of thumb. Next, we're looking at the questions that are starting from who, where, when. These questions are considered more powerful because they are usually open-ended and they usually allow to bring some additional details into whatever you're inquiring. So either about other people that you can then follow up and check some details, or a bit more context and some color and some details to the situation, or some facts that you're inquiring. So this is kind of in the hierarchy of the questions. This would be on a second level. And the last level, the most powerful, the questions that are starting from why, how, and what, because they allow the person to open up the most their thinking process, and also they are much more open-ended and they're not determined as in like what you're looking for in the end. So they allow the person to really guide the conversation and to answer them and move it into the direction that they feel is fit. I put a little asterisk here next to the why question because there is actually quite a bit of a debate that why question can elicit a bit of a defensive response. So I would recommend to look for where you put this question and how it's framed. Again, it can be very appropriate to the conversation and the context that you're having. But we will look a bit later into some examples when maybe they can make a person feel a bit like on a defensive side. So yeah, generally when you think about the questions you're asking, it's totally fine to have questions from different buckets, but just like be aware that the last three ones, they would be the ones that will bring you the most of the color about the person you're talking to. The second kind of layer or important point about the powerful questions is the scope of your inquiry. So there is a little approach you can use during your interview. You can zoom in and zoom out during the conversation to uncover some higher level topics or some higher level general ideas that the person is having, and then to zoom in to dive a bit deeper in details. So example of this, just for your consideration, is a question: what do you love about product management? What is your career aspiration? So these questions are very high level. They're very general, not necessarily they're about your company or the open role that you're discussing. They allow person to really show themselves and show their maybe some deeper passions or motivations. And then to make it a bit more relevant to the topic that you're discussing or specific role you're interviewing for, you can zoom in and add a bit more color here. So if we talk about the product management role, we can ask, so how would you go about improving our current product or our current situation with the product we're having, or whatever is the specific task that you have for this role. And the same goes to the question about the career motivation. So like what actually the person is doing at the moment in terms of advancing these career goals that they have. So when we have this two areas in consideration, what we really can do, and what I encourage you to do after this webinar, is to review the questions that you normally ask and to see how they can be maybe tweaked a little bit or improved, and from which side you can make them a bit more powerful. So just a few examples that I heard from either candidates who were preparing for interviews and we're working with them on their CV and obviously the coaching conversation, but also from my side as a hiring manager. So one of the questions you can receive during the interview: why looking for a new job? Quite a typical question, right? Somebody is applying. So here is the thing about the why, which can make a person defensive. So it's kind of, you have to justify or explain yourself. To make this a bit more powerful and also a bit more positive, you can paraphrase it into what are you looking for in next career move. So again, this will answer the question why the person is changing, and also it will make the whole kind of tone of conversation on a bit of positive move, and also will help you to follow up with maybe some secondary questions on this. Another example of questions that are usually targeting specific, so to say, gaps in the CV. So perhaps a person was not employed for a while, or perhaps you have some questions around short employment times, or any sort of usually things, so to say, a bit weird maybe, or to be alerted, right? So again, like question can be why something happened in your CV. And again, this makes people defensive. So I had a couple of clients in my coaching who were really worried that this question may come during the interview, for example, when they had a gap year, or they were moving with their partner because the partner got the job and they didn't yet, and then they had the gap. So it's like they felt really anxious about how to explain it. Although, as you can see, the intentions behind this and obviously the life situation was completely normal. So instead of making person explaining all that, you can ask, help me understand what was happening during this time, or like how did it work out that something that isn't clear for you. Again, this coming from a much more positive perspective and makes your question powerful, because this is appreciative inquiry, and the person will feel a bit more open and comfortable with you. And again, it will allow you to advance your conversation into perhaps a new area. Another question which lots of candidates and also lots of articles are written about these questions. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How to answer them? Everyone feels usually anxious about them. So like if I tell you this is my strengths, and then what do I say about my weaknesses? So confusing point. What you can do here is to paraphrase it. What is the most fulfilling aspect of your job? So this will uncover what people think is their strengths, because they will naturally connect. So if, for example, someone thinks that analytics is a strong side of them, they will say that analytics is the fulfilling part of their job. So this is how you can come to the point that you're looking for from a completely different perspective, and again empowering the person you're talking to. And one last small example: when you're asking about specific role. So here's an example from I found it really strong when I was interviewing for one of the roles. So the question was about specific roles. So what attracted you in this sales manager role? And the way the recruiter asked it, and I found was really good, is that what attracts you in leadership role generally. So this is where the person can open up about why they want to lead a team, what is their approach for leadership, and so on. So this completely changed the tone of the conversation, and it actually felt more like a conversation rather than like a job interview. So a few things that I call tricks, but obviously they're coming from the theory and practice of coaching and generally all sorts of the powerful conversations. But something that you can be using within the interview, just like spicing it up, just adding a bit more even power and discovery into your questions. So the first one is very simple question: what else? So this question can be used as a follow-up for literally any question you have, and you can ask it also not unlimited number of times, but a few times as a follow-up, and it will allow you to uncover more and more and more. So this question is super simple, but I would say it creates magic because it allows people to go to different layers that they were not maybe considering. So for example, you say like, so what do you like about this role? And what else? And what else? And then you will elicit this kind of more of the feedback, and also for the person a bit more insight discovery. So very easy one to adopt as a habit. The second one is I find really interesting, and again, you can see how you can fit it in either the roles you have kind of at the moment open and you're actively interviewing, is asking a candidate or person to score something. So, for example, you need to understand how confident the person feels on a certain skill. So you can ask them, how confident do you feel in XYZ technology on a score from 1 to 10? So this will give you a bit better understanding, or 1 to 5. It can be any score, but the point here that you just have one extra tool for evaluating the candidate. The third trick you can use is kind of a bit similar to scoring, but it just to make certain choice even a bit more defined, which I call A/B choice. So whenever a person gives you some uncertain answer, or maybe you're looking for a bit more precision, you can exactly state it in that way. You can say, so if you would have to choose between A, B, so would it be either some things within the role or some questions around, I don't know, compensation or team culture or whatever. This again will let you understand what is the deeper motivations of the person, what will be the more important for them in the role, what they're looking for, and so on. Very simple and very powerful. And the last trick is probably for a bit more advanced users, so to say. It needs a bit of practice and a bit more of patience, because sometimes may feel a bit awkward. It's silence. So I'm not talking here about awkward silence, but more about the silence when you give another person some time and space to follow up, or perhaps add on some of the point they were talking about. So, for example, you ask a question, and then you hear that the person is kind of still in the thinking process. So you just can stay silent for a couple of seconds and to see what they will add on this, and perhaps it will help you to follow up with the questioning as well. So yeah, and the last but not least from my side, and this is the feedback that I get from all the parties involved in the interviewing process, is the best interview always feels like a conversation and not a checklist. I do understand we are all busy. We all have lots of roles to fill, lots of interviews to go through. But hopefully, with a bit of practice and some of these small tips and tricks, you can make your interviewing conversations more like a flow and not just a checklist to go through it. So that was all from my side. Thank you so much for listening.